everyone. Welcome to our next episode of Chris's Classic Cinema. My name is Chris Wyert.
And I'm Jaden.
So this episode we're going to be looking at 4 animated TV movies from one of the most popular cartoon companies ever. Aside from Disney and the Warner Brothers with Looney Tunes, there's Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera was formed by William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. They started off in 1940 working on Tom and Jerry. In fact, this month, February of 2024, marks 85 years since the very first cartoon. Nice. Yeah, and they did countless cartoons of Tom and Jerry until the 50s. But then television came in, and they decided to do cartoon characters on that. Now you have some of the most now you have some very popular names like Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, Snagglepuss.
Scooby-Doo is also up there. You also got the Jetsons and the Flintstones.
Yes, and they were some of the first ever TV, and the Flintstones were like the first animated sitcom, if I recall. And they're still talked about to this day.
Yep, they're still celebrated to this day on television networks like Boomerang.
And Cartoon Network.
Rest in peace, Cartoon Network.
Yeah, well, and when it came to Hanna-Barbera, they had a partnership that lasted all the way up into the 90s. Unfortunately, they're both gone, but their legacy still lives on. Now we're talking about 4 animated movies that were made, actually part of a mini-series that was done during the mid-1980s. You see, they wanted to try to do some animated movies with their iconic cartoon characters, so they set up this whole thing called Hanna-Barbera's Superstar 10. And we're going to be talking about 4 of those films. And and when it comes to each movie, they have their own unique story, but they still have some of the iconic characters that you can think of. And trust me, and I can honestly say I grew up with some of them since I was a little kid.
Same here. This is also another one that's going to hit hard home for me, but yeah.
Yeah. With that in mind, let's get to work. So for our first film, we're actually going back to the Wild Wild West. But it's actually with a character you wouldn't expect to have a movie star him. I'm talking about The Good, the Bad, and Huckleberry Hound. In the town of Tupit, California, Huckleberry Hound becomes sheriff. The only reason is because the people there want to take down a group of burglar brothers called the Dalton Gang. And unfortunately, anything that can go wrong does go wrong, but it all works out in the end.
For both of them. Both for Huckleberry and also the Daltons.
Yeah. Now, I'll just say it straight out. I've known this movie since I was a toddler, and it's still, honestly, one of my all-time favorite Hanna-Barbera movies.
It's easy to see why. And it's because it is an icon of its own, but it's also got a lot of really wacky, out-of-place elements in it as well.
Yeah, it does have, for a cartoon set in the Wild Wild West, it does have its zaniness. And of course,
zaniness is a way to put it.
And of course, anachronisms.
Yeah, like Yogi Bear and Boo Boo just vacationing from Alaska,
Look at the bears! Look at the bears!
And then try, yeah.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to these cartoons, they all have the same cast members, and some of them have been with Hanna-Barbera since the very start of their careers. I'm talking about some of the most iconic voice actors you can think of. Daws Butler, Don Messick, Frank Welker, who is still alive to this day, thank God.
I think he's still going, too.
Yeah, he is. If I recall, he was even in a Book of World Records for the most successful voice actor ever.
I would have thought would have been Bart Simpson's voice actor. Because she's in everything. She does everything. She just retired.
Well, Frank Welker's been doing it ever since Scooby-Doo.
That's true. You gotta hit me with that, yeah.
Yeah. Now the thing is, and when unfortunately, this is actually Daws Butler's last film just before he died. He died just a few days after this aired on TV.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah, but still, he has his iconic roles of Huckleberry Hound, Yogi Bear, Quick Draw McGraw.
Yeah, and you could definitely tell that this was definitely made for TV too, with all the interludes that would be sprinkled throughout the show.
Yeah,
Because it was a show. It was more of a show than a movie.
yeah, and it's always so. I always love the title cards and just how nice they look.
They do look really, really well. Actually, this is probably one of the better aged Hanna-Barbera movies in my opinion, because the animation is so smooth, and I'll bring it up later in this episode.
Yeah.
But a lot of the Hanna-Barbera trademark animation tricks they use have become a bit of a meme over the years with how dated some of them are.
I mean, especially when it comes to like that classic element of the background just repeating over and over again.
And also the secret hidden door.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the characters. I mean, you have Huckleberry Hound as the sheriff, as a mysterious, steely-eyed, and silent-time stranger who comes out of nowhere, wants to have a simple farm to raise goats and pigs, and next thing you know, he ends up as sheriff.
I like how he's anything but any of those things.
Yeah, and the thing is, this movie is actually sort of a parody of the classic Western High Noon.
Yeah, okay.
Well, think about it. You have a sheriff. He has to take down some robbers, and everyone's basically saying no.
Yep. Not only that, but does High Noon have a subplot for him falling in love with a Native American?
No, that was him. That was him marrying he was just married.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah. Yeah. But still, it's just. Yeah, let's talk about apparently, Huckleberry Hound ends up in love with a Native American girl named Desert Flower, and I gotta say, I honestly love their love story still to this day.
It's a very, very unique love story. I think it's kind of cute.
Plus, you gotta admit, Daws Butler did a great job of singing that song.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the side characters. I mean, you have some of the big TV characters that time, like Yogi Bear and Boo Boo, Quick Draw McGraw, and his sidekick Baba Louie.
Which I think those two are probably the best placed out of all of them in the entire cast.
Yeah. And they also have a Snagglepuss and Hokey Wolf as the mayor.
Yeah, Hokey. Now that was a nice touch, having Hokey Wolf as the mayor. I thought that was really, really cleverly done.
Yeah. And then you have other characters too. I mean, you have the lady who you have the lady who's you have Rusty Nails, the lady who's basically the showgirl at the saloon.
Oh yeah, and you'll recognize her voice later in the episode too. She's the voice actress for that was in a lot too.
Well, you can recognize the voice of the bartender, who is played by none other than Pat Buttram. If the name sounds familiar, he was Mr. Haney in Green Acres, and he voiced so many Disney characters during the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in the Aristocats, the Rescuers, the Fox and the Hound.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, I mean,
He always had that. He even said that when it comes to his voice, it sounded like it never really hit puberty.
Fair enough, I guess.
And then you have the Dalton brothers.
Yeah.
Dinky, Pinky, Finky, and Stinky.
Yeah.
Each of them have their own unique personalities, but all they want to do is spread chaos in the Wild West. And, of course, to get money.
Yes. Not just to be the biggest, baddest, meanest, rootest, tootinest bad guys in 2-Bit. But
Okay, Yosemite Sam.
But then they went the extra mile and were like, we're going to rule all of America. You know, because back then, America felt like the world. And it might as well have been at that time.
Yeah, and I gotta admit, they're very funny.
It is. There's a lot of cute tropes with that.
I mean, you have Charlie. I mean, when it comes to the voices to me, you have Charlie Adler as Pinky.
Yeah.
And now, Charlie Adler was famous for voicing Buster Bunny in Tiny Toon Adventures. He was also the original voices of Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network. Mm-hmm. And then you have Pat Fraley as Finky, who was Krang in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show.
Yeah.
And it's so weird. I love hearing Craig's voice from basically a spoiled brat sucking his thumb every time.
he's just so adorable and drop kickable. You know, he's adorable and drop kickable. They throw tantrums too whenever they don't get.
And
their
then
way.
you have Dinky, who's the big guy, but he's sort of slow-minded.
You could say dumb.
And then you have Stinky, who's basically the leader of the gang, and he's very conniving. But unfortunately, when it comes to trying to get rid of Huckleberry Hound, it's practically pointless.
And then of course there's
He'd have better luck. I think he wouldn't even have that much luck with Droopy Dog.
No, and then of course you got Pinky, the most flamboyant of the bunch. I honestly questioned a few times what Pinky was about. You know, a few times there were.
I think you say the same thing about Snagglepuss.
I mean, yeah. But I think with Pinky, it's way more in your face, down to the Shirley Temple with 2 cherries.
And next thing you know, he wants ballet.
Wants ballet, rides off in the sunset, escaping while looking directly at a mirror at himself.
And then you have other characters like Huckleberry Hound's faithful horsey, Bob.
Who gets mad that he never called him Bob until like 2/3 of the way through the movie.
And next thing you know, he's talking out of nowhere, and he's like, "Everything's been okay till now."
Well, yeah.
And next thing you know, he's voiced by Frank Welker.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, this movie is still so good, and the characters are just so likable. Plus, the slapstick is hilarious.
The slapstick is really, really, really good.
I mean, I love that whole scene with Stinky trying to blow up Huck, and yet he keeps giving it back.
Being so polite about it too. It's so seamless.
And next thing you know, there's that classic chase scene, and then he comes out of nowhere like Droopy, and they're like, "Okay, this way."
And then they go into that deep mine shaft, and then they're literally entering a level of hell.
And next thing you know, the devil comes out, and his Huckleberry Hound in a mask, and like, "Wait a minute, there's 4 of us against him. Let's get him."
I was hoping you guys wouldn't notice that. That sounds like it's something I would try and do.
It's just, man, this is funny.
It's clean, childish humor, is what it is. Unadulterated childish humor.
It's classic Hanna-Barbera slapstick.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
I mean, it's not like as hardcore as like say Tom and Jerry, but
No, nothing even close.
yeah, but still, it's just.
It's a lot of fun.
And the animation too. I mean, it's very impressive for that.
It's pretty good.
For a TV animated movie.
And what, it came out in 84?
Yeah, 84, 85.
Yeah, I think it came out in 84.
Yeah, but still, it's just. It really gives you that sense of the Old West, with a few minor tweaks
I
here and
don't
there.
know about that. I think the moment Yogi Bear and Boo Boo walked onto the scene, that kind of ruined it for me. that ruined all the illusion you could have possibly had for it, because...
I mean, next thing you know, there's this guy actually doing a news report with Magilla Gorilla.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just, man, but still, it's just so likable.
Yeah. 1849, they somehow invented television.
Yeah, I think it was all that gold in the gold rush.
Rush into their, all that gold rush into their head, replacing all the blood.
Yeah, but still, it's just, and when it comes to just the jokes, I mean, they're just classic.
They're good jokes.
But of course, then there's also some elements too. Like I said, the love story between Huck and Desert Flower, and it's a classic love story, and you can't go wrong with that.
No, I also really liked how it was parsed out really, really well in chapters. It parsed out really, really well in chapters. Not to mention the recap towards the end and everything like that.
Yeah.
It was broken up really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole chapter of just recapping everything up to that point, and you're like, okay, they really did that fast.
Well, the reason for that was because I have a theory about that. Different day.
I think they filmed it all, and I think they aired it all in just one go. I don't think they did it in 2 separate days.
Reruns. You have to understand reruns. So if you got up partway through and missed something, I mean, the movie itself is an hour and a half.
All these,
but
when it comes to
without the commercials.
When it comes to all these movies, they're an hour and a half.
But that's without the commercials. You gotta understand there's also commercials.
Yes, that is true. So they would be able to fill up like a 2-hour slot.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess a 2-hour slot. So you're a little kid in 1984. You're not sitting down for 2 hours straight. You need the recap.
Yeah.
You need the recap, even if it is a little quick. You need it.
Yeah, and of course, there are a few songs that were actually written by Hanna-Barbera, and I mean they're okay.
They're all right. They're no Disney.
Yeah, but still, it's just my God, this movie is still so good.
It's really, really good.
And like I said, this was the last film Dawes Butler saw just before he died.
Hmm.
He was amazing.
Overall, what were you gonna give this movie?
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars.
I'll agree to that. 4 out of 5.
I mean, yeah. And here's the thing too. If you want to watch this movie, there's actually just last year an entire Blu-ray set of all 10 Hanna-Barbera Superstar 10 movies was released. So you can buy it off of Amazon.
It's easy. It's really, really easy to acquire too. I know that the Internet Archive is also a good place to get it. I also know that Boomerang and Cartoon Network, you can actually get the Boomerang streaming service. I'm sure it's on there too.
Maybe. But
You know,
still,
it's one of the more, Hanna-Barbera content is one of the more easily accessible.
yeah. Yeah, and trust me, you'll love it.
Mm-hmm.
With that in mind, let's move on to our next movie. This also features Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, and those guys. It also features 2 very underused characters, Augie Doggy and Daddy Doggy.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. It's actually it's an adventure movie, and out of nowhere, it features what is still one of the biggest planes in history.
I think it still is the biggest plane in history.
Oh no, there are bigger ones than that.
Oh, there's bigger ones now? Okay, I'm out.
Yeah. I am talking about Yogi Bear and the Magical Flight of the Spruce Goose. Yogi Bear and his friends find themselves in the cockpit of the Spruce Goose. Next thing you know, they end up on adventures saving animals in danger. They end up meeting a villain who wants to search for gold. Meanwhile, they have this stowaway little tomboy girl who basically is with them on the trip.
Mm-hmm.
With that in mind, I'm pretty sure some of you are wondering, what the heck is the Spruce Goose?
He's got notes this time. I'm not the ones with notes for once. The Spruce Goose was this giant wooden plane built which got approved for funding at the end of World War II.
Yes, it was built by the eccentric millionaire Howard Hughes, who was also a film producer and director as well.
Yeah.
If the name sounds familiar, Leonardo DiCaprio played him in the 2004 movie This Aviator, directed by Martin Scorsese.
Which is a pretty good movie in itself, but a little modern for the likings of this for this show.
So during his career, he wanted to build the biggest plane ever.
Yeah.
And with that, we have the Hughes H-4 Hercules. To this day, it is still the largest flying boat ever built.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's nicknamed the Spruce Goose, it's actually made of birch.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you want to know how big this is, I can tell you it is huge. It says, according to my notes, the height of it is almost 80 feet. It's a length of almost 220 feet. And it has a wingspan of about 320. And it was a record. The wingspan held the record for over 72 years, until it was finally beaten back in 2019 by a plane called the Stratolaunch. Now, the plane only flew once in November of 1947.
And the FFA did not approve that long. It was an illegal flight.
And the thing is, it barely made it off the ground, or at least the water.
It was just a little trick because it could fly. Like, theoretically, they did the math. The thing can fly and fly pretty well. The issue was, and the reason why it's been dry docked and in a museum all these decades, is because this was originally a plane funded by the Air Force and the United States military, and at the end of World War II.
It was originally going to be used for cargo.
It was going to be originally used for heavy cargo across the Atlantic and all that. The problem was, money ran, even though the plane was done, the war was over. much like a lot of really cool projects, it was too little, too late.
And next, you know, it ends up in a hangar in Long Beach, California, right next to the ocean liner Queen Mary, which is that time. And it was on display in Long Beach from 1980 until 1992. After that, it was moved 1,000 miles north to McMinnville, Oregon, which is about 40 miles southwest of the capital of Portland.
Oregon. Oregon's a small town in Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to see the Spruce Goose, go to the Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum in McMinnville, Oregon.
Yeah, because the story about the Spruce Goose is really crazy. Because, again, Howard Hughes stole his own plane because it was not allowed nor approved to fly and flew it anyways as a middle finger to the U.S. military. Just to prove, because everybody said it couldn't fly, and he's like, oh yeah? Watch this.
I even heard the knuckle crack.
That was perfect. I did not plan for that.
Yeah. And the thing is, just last year, the plane was actually put in the National Register of Historic Places.
Yes, because a vehicle is a place.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm sure some of you are wondering, why would they use this plane for a Hanna-Barbera movie?
Why not? Why not? Actually, no, my favorite cameo of the Spruce Goose is actually in Leverage.
What's that, a TV show?
Leverage is another TV show that was featuring con artists.
Oh, I'll have to look it up.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's talk about this movie. Now, you have Yogi Bear, and he's actually leading a tour group with his friend Boo Boo. You have Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, Snagglepuss, Augie Doggy, and his dad. And they end up in the Spruce Goose while it's at Long Beach. And out of nowhere, it turns magical.
It turns magical after they flipped a few switches and pressed some random buttons to try and get out after getting lost.
In my opinion, that's like something out of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yeah. Yeah, it is the same energy, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's just out of the blue, and you're like, okay, did they just jump the shark? Or did they jump Jabberjaw?
Well, technically, no. They walked over the sharks and nearly fell into it. That was a scene. That was a scene.
That is true. It's a shame one of them was a Jabberjaw.
Yeah. Oh, but man.
No respect at all.
I would have not been surprised if he shown up, though. I would have been not surprised in the slightest.
No respect at all. Now,
all I can think about right now is the sharks going, yeah. All I can think about is the sharks doing that.
Yeah. Now, Daz Butler does return, as well as Don Messick as Yogi and Boo Boo. And let's just say it, they're basically they're a pair.
They're a pair.
Yeah. And you have other characters. And then you have a little tomboy girl named Bernice who actually was on the plane with her parents, but she ended up falling asleep just like them.
No. They got lost. They didn't fall asleep. She fell asleep after getting lost, losing her parents, and basically ended up being a stowaway.
And next, she's helping them on their adventures of saving animals and all that stuff.
While threatening all of them with a baseball bat every 10 minutes.
Yeah. And then you have...
Because you cannot, because nobody is allowed to call her Bernie.
Yeah. And then you have the Dread Baron, voiced by Paul Winchell.
One of my favorite iconic it's one of my favorite Hanna-Barbera characters.
And it's one of my favorite voices, too. I mean, it's the voice of Tigger from Disney's Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even hear the laugh sometimes. And it's just... Paul Winchell was a legend. And him and his dog Mumbly are just... I think they're the best parts of this movie.
Honestly, same. Like, Wacky Wacious is one of my favorite TV shows, and seeing them going, curses, and then the dog laughing, just... exactly like that. It is iconic in its own right.
Yeah. And honestly, when it comes to the story, I thought the first half was really slow.
It was kind of slow, and it's kind of, yeah, jumping the shark is one way to put it, yeah. Or
better yet, like that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Get on with it!
They should have done that. They should have done that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they're just rambling. I'm like, okay, let's get to the next part.
That's what the fast forward button's for. That's what I've used it for. Yeah.
Yeah, no offense to the animators or anything.
No, and let's talk about the animation. I think this is about as good as the other one too. Like the animation sequence, like when they're flying in space, holy bananas. Like a lot of the animation sequences were really, really out there and experimental.
And I give them credit for
a TV movie.
And
You
also,
didn't have to.
and also when it comes to like just showing the sheer size of the spruce goose.
Oh yeah. You know, that's one thing that bothered me about it was the showing of the size and then comparing it to a killer whale. Because I'm pretty sure a killer whale is quite a bit smaller.
It is. If anything, like if you want to compare it to, it's even it's even longer than the Statue of Liberty.
It
the way
would
to
have a
compare it.
difficult time fitting in Lambeau Field.
It would be, yeah,
It's almost the length of a football field.
it's over the length of a football field.
It's over the length of a football.
The wingspan was about 320 feet.
It would not fit in Lambeau Field very easy. It's almost the size of Lambeau Field.
Yeah,
The whole stadium, not just the field.
yeah, just shows you how huge the plane is. And then the slapstick is still pretty good.
It's pretty good. Yeah, especially when they poke their head out and then, Huckleberry turns into a block of ice.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they just pull a magical hammer out somewhere and just shatter. Like,
And then of course out of nowhere you have Quick Draw McGraw turning into his famous alter ego El Kabong.
that was pretty good.
I gotta give him credit for also including that because I never thought that they would do that.
That was pretty good, actually.
I mean, they didn't
I
even
actually
do it.
forgot about El Capone until he showed up.
They didn't even do it in the movie. They didn't even do it in The Good, the Bad, and Huckleberry Hound.
No. Well, he's busy running a bank that kept getting robbed and only had one nugget of gold in the whole bank.
True. Well, anyway, now when it comes to this movie, like I said, it's pretty slow.
Yeah, it's
But
pretty out there at times too.
But it's still good in its own right. And for a lot of if you're a fan of planes, then if you want to see the Spruce Goose actually doing some stuff, this is it.
Oh yeah, there isn't that much material out there that talks about the Spruce Goose and the absurdity of that wooden thing.
Yeah, I mean, that plane's as iconic now as like the Spirit of St. Louis.
Yeah.
And like I said, to this day, it is still one of the biggest planes ever.
And made of wood. We cannot preface this. It's made of wood. They decided, of all the material, what's lightweight and water resistant and could be wood!
Birch, to be specific.
Birch, it's such an absurd thing. It's so absurd.
And like I said, if you want to see the Spruce Goose, go to Oregon. It's still there, and my God, it looks amazing.
3.5, that's what I'm giving the movie.
That's me too. 3.5
Because I feel
out
like
of 5.
because the story definitely derails quite a lot, and then kind of it derails and then slows down and then derails a lot. I mean, the aliens being in there.
Oh,
yeah.
we forgot to talk about those. The aliens. They just come out of nowhere, but they're just so funny.
I like the part where they decide to take over New Jersey.
Yeah, and I love the fact that one of the voice actors is actually Dave Coulier, aka Joey from Full House. Cut it out.
Yeah.
And actually, at that time, the two guys who were voicing those aliens, Frank Welker and Dan Coulier, they were actually doing the cartoon Muppet Babies.
Yeah, not to mention, I think Full House was also airing at the time too, so they were busy.
Yeah. Frank Welker was doing Kermit, and Dave Coulier was doing Animal.
Yeah, so they were busy. They were busy. Well, they're all busy. I mean, this was a superstar series for a reason.
Yeah. But still, it's just, yeah.
3.5, story's a bit out there, but hey, it's a giant wooden magical plane.
Yeah, and of course, and like I said, the villain's hilarious.
The villains are hilarious.
Yeah. So that was Yogi Bear and the Magical Flight of the Spruce Goose. Now for our next film, we're doing a crossover with two families that you never would have that at first you think, okay, they have got to meet each other.
Oh yeah. I mean, this was decades in the making, let's be fair.
Yeah, I mean, You have the original Stone Age family, you have the family of the future, and now they are finally meeting. I am talking about the Jetsons meet the Flintstones.
I remember watching this on Boomerang back in the day. This was on Boomerang and rerunning all the time.
In the future, George Jetson's son Elroy builds a time machine. And next thing you know, the family finds themselves back in the Stone Age when they end up meeting the Flintstones. And next thing you know, the Flintstones find themselves in the future with the Jetsons stuck in the past. Now they have to find a way to basically get back to their own times while also dealing with their own troubles with their own careers.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I really appreciate about this movie is the story writing. Out of all four movies that we're talking about, this one has the best story writing out of all of them because it's so seamless and integrated so well in one another.
I mean, in the first half hour, you have before they actually meet, you have the buildup of them when it comes to like how they're dealing with how they're struggling with their careers.
And it's traditional, like it's old school Flintstones doing old school Flintstone stuff along with old school's Jetsons doing old school Jetson things.
Not to mention, yeah.
So at first they did operate as like separate episodes, and they even had the jingles too correctly, and it was just, they could, at the time they were treated as, you know, in the lead up, they could have been treated as separate episodes.
That is true. And then, of course, you have when they actually meet and things just really go topsy-turvy.
Oh yeah, for obvious reasons.
But still, it's just, man, I think I recall on a Watch Mojo video, they named this like one of the top 10 best crossovers ever.
It's easy to see why as well, because again, the story writing is so seamless, and of course, you have the Jetsons and the Flintstones both hitting their honeymoon phases because they both basically blow their worlds out of the park of, oh my gosh, it's the person of the future. Oh my gosh, it's the person of that. And they both get filthy rich temporarily.
Yeah. Yeah, but now when it comes to the families in general, you can tell how much they still care about each other.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you have the Jetsons with their kids, you have the Flintstones with the Rubbles.
Oh yeah.
And this was before, apparently this must take place, I think this probably takes place like sometime after Pebbles and Bam Bam grew up.
Oh yeah! I forgot about that sub-arc in the Flintstones franchise. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think this was I'd like to believe that this was after their kids grew up.
I like to think so too, and also I'd like to think that canonically it takes place after the live actions.
We don't talk about those.
Because with Mr. Flintstone, like Fred becoming the vice president or trying to become vice president of the company.
Yeah. Well, anyway, now when it comes to their stories too, I mean, you have George Jetson. Apparently, his boss, Mr. Spacely, is trying to figure out who keeps stealing his idea.
Who's the mole? Who's the leaker?
Yeah, and apparently, you see, Mr. Spacely has a rival named Cogswell who keeps stealing his ideas. And it's up to, George has to find out who it is or he's fired. Meanwhile, Fred and Barney want to try to
Score some extra clams so that they can take their wives on a really, really nice vacation.
but unfortunately it costs them their jobs when they're found out.
Yes, because they were supposed to work the night shift and decided to gamble what clams they had
And then
in disguise against their own boss.
and the thing is, Barney was in drag.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pulled it off surprisingly well. Just saying, he pulled it off.
Yeah. And then, of course, and then when it comes to the Jetsons, the kids are having their troubles too. I mean, Elroy's trying to perfect his time machine, while their daughter Judy is just getting over a recent breakup.
And then falling right back in love with another guy.
Back in the Stone Age.
Yep.
Who actually is the leader of a band.
Yep. I think it was Zod, was it? Zod?
Iggy Sandstone.
Iggy Sandstone. Iggy Sandstone, yeah. Iggy Pop, okay, yeah.
I got him. The song that he sang is still pretty catchy.
It is pretty catchy. I'll give it that.
Yeah. Now when it comes to and then you have, of course, the animals too. I mean, you have Dino from the Flintstones and the dog Astro, and they're just
Yeah, doing dog things.
yeah. And it's just, man. And then you have and when it comes to the Jetsons, you have the robot maid Rosie, who, when the Jetsons are gone, she's determined to get them back.
Determined to get him back, doing everything possible. Not going great.
You also have the computer in Mr. Spacely's office, Rudy, who is trying to help out as well.
Well, was he? Was he? That's a spoiler. I'm not spoiling that part.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have the bosses, Mr. Spacely and Mr. Slate, and they are just as ruthless as a boss can be.
Very much a classic boss, like busting their chops and everything to get back to work or else.
And, of course, when it comes to Mr. Spacely, he's trying to find a way to one-up Cogswell. Mr. Slate is just trying to get through his business. And then, of course, next you know, the Jetsons are stuck in the Stone Age, and the Flintstones are in the Space Age, and they each become celebrities in those different time eras.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to the George Jetson, I mean, it's insane how much he owns in just a matter of days.
Yeah, well, you gotta think about that, right? Like, you go from being in a hyper-capitalistic society who's really cutthroat and, like, doing it, using computers for everything, and then he gets blasted to the past, and it's literally blasted to the Stone Age, and goes, it's basically like exploiting the time, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's using...
He's investing his money smartly. I mean, he's living rent-free, technically, because the Flintstones' house is, the Flintstones' house, not theirs.
Yeah. And then, of course, the Flintstones become famous as, like, the first modern Stone Age family. No pun intended.
Well, I think that was the tagline.
Okay, it was pun intended.
It was the tagline of the series.
Yeah. And then you have the villain Cogswell. He's trying to one-up Mr. Spacely any chance he gets. He uses a robot dog as his spy. Mm-hmm. And it does suck that Mr. Spacely and him just can't get along.
Nah, they're business enemies. It's like Tim Cook and it's kind of like Bill Gates versus Steve Jobs type thing.
Oh, well, that's a good way of saying it. Now, when it comes to the animation, it's really good.
It's really, really good. This is, again, there are moments where it's like, classic Hanna-Barbera moment, like when where the entire background is, you could tell, watercolored, except for that one door that gets broken down by Mr. Spacely.
Oh, yeah.
Twice.
And, I mean, you also have, like, the elements of, like, the classic Jetsons show, like, the modern technology, and with the Flintstones, like, the
Stone Age technology, where every piece of technology is replaced by another dinosaur.
I mean, you have a dinosaur as the lawnmower, and Elroy says he likes it, he's like, at last someone appreciates me.
Yeah.
And then you have a pig as the garbage disposal in the sink.
Oh yeah, that's been canonical for a long time.
But then you have other elements too. I mean, you have this whole local picnic in Bedrock, and it's a competition, and George is basically using his modern technology to basically help Fred get his job back.
Well, but then also the main competitor that they were competing against was also cheating, so everybody just kind of ignored the cheating.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, yeah, you'll never see me walking on hot coals, that's for sure.
Not without cheating. What about Legos?
No comment.
Oh, you've done that. Okay.
Yeah. All in all, this movie it's a crossover that people have been waiting.
Really good crossover.
At that time, they had been waiting like a quarter of a century for that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, this is up there with some of the most iconic crossovers that you can think of. One of my favorites from the recent times was Scooby-Doo meeting Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yeah, that was so good. I actually watched that for Halloween last year.
That
is so good. Like, surprisingly good.
Yeah. So all in all, when it comes to this movie, I'm giving it 4 stars out of 5.
I'll give it a 4 out of 5 as well. I think we're pretty much on the same page here.
I mean, this movie is, iconic. It's an iconic Hanna-Barbera crossover that you can think of, and
It was long overdue then, and it was well deserved, and it caters to every single trope, and it caters to every single little niche that everybody likes about the Jetsons and the Flintstones.
and frankly, I'll take this over Tom and Jerry and Willy Wonka.
Oh God! Next episode.
No. And by the way, that is a real movie. I do not recommend it. So that was the Jetsons Meet the Flintstones. Now for our last film, we're going to be dealing with another classic Hanna-Barbera cartoon dog. In this case, Scooby-Doo. Now when it comes to the Superstars 10, there was actually 3 Scooby-Doo movies made.
Yeah.
All of them starring Scooby, Shaggy, and Scooby's nephew Scrappy.
Yeah.
First there was Scooby-Doo Meets the Blues Brothers, then Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, featuring the late great Glynis Johns. And then you have the movie we're reviewing, Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf. Scooby-Doo's friend Shaggy ends up turning into a werewolf by Count Dracula because he wants him to be in the next big monster race. He makes a bargain with Shaggy. If he wins, he can turn back into a human. And man, this is zany.
We had an argument about which one of the 3 to do, and I won with this one because this is my favorite one of the 3.
Well, this one is definitely one of those, okay, what did I just watch?
Hey. Daytona 500 was last weekend, okay? I thought it was fitting. And and with that in mind, it's such a fun movie, especially with all the monsters.
Yeah, I mean, you have some of the most iconic monsters to think
All
of.
the iconic monsters.
Dracula, the Mummy, let me see, who else?
The creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right, and also a skeleton, if I recall.
There's even an Elvira knockoff.
Who's basically Dracula's wife.
Well, is she? I don't know. That's actually not mentioned. I've never thought of that.
Yeah.
I've seen this movie like 100 times on VHS. My tape is worn out from watching it over the years.
Well, I've honestly never seen this as much. I think I recall seeing it on Boomerang and that when I was a kid, and it's honestly not one of my favorite Scooby-Doo movies.
It's in my top 5.
Yeah, well, honestly, I preferred Ghoul School.
I don't. You see, I don't like Ghoul School. Okay. But the reason I really, really like this one, I guess, is because it's a wacky races parody. And I love wacky races.
Well, that's a good way of pointing it. I mean, it's basically a giant race with it's literally monstrous.
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun because it's got a really decent story arc, actually. You know?
I mean, and I gotta give them credit too with the designs of the race cars. Those are pretty good.
They are really good race cars, and especially in the crash scenes, and also the fact that all the cheating as well, all the cheating that they were doing.
Man.
Because Dracula is doing everything possible to keep Shaggy imprisoned, so that way they could still have a werewolf, because their old werewolf retired.
Yeah. That is true. It's just, I don't blame him though.
Oh yeah, and the prizes for who wins the race are pretty wacky. Like the pit of, literally a pitch black darkness, which by the way is the cheapest dang prize an animator could think of. It's like, what could be a horrifying? Let's just make it a black screen. They really made it a black screen. The animation in this is out of all the 4 movies that we discussed, this has probably the worst animation.
That is true. That is because this was actually the first, out of all, it was one of only 2 that was actually digitally animated.
Not only that, it was one of the last ones out on the 10. I think this came out in 89?
No, before that. And this was, like I said, this was only one of 2 that was digitally animated. The other was one with Yogi Bear.
Yeah. So, the animation in this is aged... Well, to be fair, all 4 of them have aged kind of okay and to poorly. This one's aged the poorest out of the 4.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to, the other 2 Scooby-Doo movies, the animation in those 2 have aged really well.
Yeah, where this hasn't. Because you could definitely tell that a lot of the scenes are recycled. You could definitely tell some of the backgrounds were recycles and loops. Like the classic Hanna-Barbera memes that everybody points to online as, oh yeah, classic Hanna-Barbera animation tricks. All of them are used in this.
Yeah, and this wouldn't be the first time Scooby-Doo would be digitally animated at that time. He would end up being, they ended up using that kind of animation for the cartoon A Pup Named Scooby-Doo.
Oh god, we don't talk about that.
Hey, I liked it.
I didn't.
Now let's talk about the cast. I mean, you have the original voices of Scooby-Doo and Shaggy, Don Messick, and Casey Kasem, God rest them.
Yes.
And they're still as iconic as a parrot as you could think.
Oh yeah, Shaggy's voice cracking is perfect and spot on as ever. The interaction between the two is just spot on.
And then we talk about Scrappy.
Scrappy-Doo, yeah.
Now, I know that there are people who just despise him.
And if you do, go watch the original Scooby-Doo live action.
Yes. I remember seeing that when I was 10.
Yeah. But I'm an apologist. I liked Scrappy-Doo when he's in the cartoons.
That I agree with. I mean,
And in this instance, he's actually a pretty decent side character.
Yeah, because he's actually helpful.
He's actually helpful along with Shaggy's girlfriend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, wait, Shaggy has a girlfriend in this?
If you look at the entire canonical series of Scooby-Doo, and yes, there is a timeline, Shaggy's had probably more girlfriends than anybody else. He's got like 3 or 4.
Yeah, I still remember when he wanted to date that alien in the Alien Invaders.
Which time? That's not the only alien that's not the only alien/monster he's fallen in love with. Okay? Let's make that perfectly clear. He fell in love with, again, original live action Scooby-Doo has proven that.
And then you have Count Dracula, and he is as conniving as a villain, but still freaking hilarious.
Oh yeah, like with the sunblock. SPF like 9,052 or something like that. Just this ridiculous SPF rating for sunblock because he needs it in order to be outside in the sun without bursting into flames.
And then you have the girl with him who, basically the showgirl like Vanna White.
Or with a very similar, gown to Elvira as well.
Yeah.
And the music, okay, come on. The musical dance sequence was pretty good, okay?
I give him credit.
That's one of the more iconic Scooby-Doo songs.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have his minions, the Hunch Bunch.
The Hunch Bunch, yeah. Who are supposed to be these disgusting hunchbacks things.
Like something out of Igor and Frankenstein.
But, oddly enough, were the most pleasing to look at out of everyone else. Because a lot of the monsters are supposed to be disgustingly good.
And then you have all the other monsters, and we don't really get to know them that much.
No, we don't.
But it's like, you know what they are, but you're not supposed to cheer for them.
No, not really.
Yeah. And then the slapstick. I mean, it's classic Scooby-Doo.
It's good slapstick. Okay, it's really good slapstick.
Yeah, I admit the slapstick is good. But then it's just, honestly, I just honestly don't,
Let's hear it.
well, it wasn't bad, but I honestly prefer Ghoul School.
It's actually easy to say that. In terms of like the Scooby-Doo fandom, this is one of the least popular movie choices amongst fans.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with the ones that were like from the 2000s. I mean, I'm talking like the Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. That's still one of my favorites.
Not to mention What's New Scooby-Doo, the TV series.
Yes.
So yeah, and I came from that same era. But when you're broke and all you could do is buy $5 VHS specials, that was one of the ones my mom and dad picked up for me.
Yeah.
And we got Google School eventually as well. But
And like I said, just a few years back, Scooby-Doo did a crossover with Courage the Cowardly Dog, and that was amazing.
So
He's still going strong after over 55 years.
And a few hiccups.
I take it you're talking about the live-action movies?
I'm talking about Velma.
Oh, the show from Max.
I'm talking about Velma that people hate watched.
Jinkies.
You know, that's like my only gripes with any of the Superstar 10 Scooby-Doo movies is like the entire, it's only like 2 or 3 characters from the Scooby-Doo franchise. You don't have the Velma, you don't have Daphne, you don't have Fred. That's like my biggest problem with them.
Well, I guess they wanted to try to focus more on Scooby-Doo and Shaggy because they're basically the most popular of the gang.
That may be true, but it's not the gang without all 5 of them.
Well, think about this. Back in the 70s, they had the spin-off of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo.
That's true. That's true. But even that had Velma. Even that had Daphne dropping in occasionally, though.
That's true. Well, I guess it determines on like what you prefer.
This movie is, out of the 4 that we're talking about, the most polarizing. A lot of people don't like this movie. I already kind of know what rating you'll give it, and it's going to be probably a bit more polarizing than mine. And it's easy to see why. The animation style is kind of poor. The story is kind of out there. You kind of have to be a bit of a race fan, and a bit of a Scooby-Doo fan, and a bit of a monster fan, and there ain't many of those that are all 3.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to give it a super low rating if that's what you're thinking.
Nah, I wasn't thinking, but I knew you weren't going to give it a super high one.
Well, if anything, I'm going somewhere in between. Let's say 3 out of 5.
I knew he'd say 3 out of 5. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
I love this movie. I do. I love it.
Yeah, well, like I said, I prefer Ghoul School. I honestly haven't seen Boo Brothers, but I want to see it.
Okay.
Maybe next season we could do 4 of the other
Or
movies.
more of them, yes.
Yeah.
There are 10.
Yes, and like I said, if you want, you can go buy them on Blu-ray on Amazon, or you can just find DVDs.
But you know what? Let us know in the comment section on the YouTube if you want to see more Hanna-Barbera content from us. We'll definitely do another one of these episodes.
Because even in the 60s they had animated movies in theaters.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up with Hey There, It's Yogi Bear from 1964, and that's still one of my favorite Hanna-Barbera movies.
Or if we're feeling really, really disgusting with ourselves, we'll do some of the live-action stuff.
No. That's way too late.
Really? The original one was like 92, 93? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I thought you were talking about like the Scooby-Doo live-action films from the 2000s.
Oh, no, I was talking about the original Flintstones.
Oh, with John Goodman.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's still a little. I don't know if that's still a little late in my book, but still, when it comes to Hanna-Barbera, their popularity is still going strong to this day, and
Oh, yeah. I could talk about Hanna-Barbera all day. Like, this is the first episode I've done in a while without having notes.
and it's just insane that these cartoons are still as iconic as they. I mean, think about it. Tom and Jerry have been around for 85 years, yet they're still as iconic as any modern Disney character.
If you throw on a classic 60s or 50s Hanna-Barbera episode of anything that's still active and known today, like, kids will still be glued to the screen. It's still equally as magical as Disney in my book.
And Looney Tunes.
Despite the lack of budget, because they did not have nearly the budget that everybody else did, but they still did really well for themselves.
That is true. I mean, when it comes to the animation, when it first started, it looked as limited as, say, Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah, and like even all 4 of these, like you take a look at it, it's like did this really come out in the 80s? This more looks like 60s or 70s, but they wanted to keep the animation style that's true to the originals.
Yeah, well, they did a good job.
They did a really, really good job.
If anything, all I can say is, if you haven't seen Hanna-Barbera, you got to see it.
Yeah.
And if you want,
Yeah.
and like I said, buy the movie. If you want the movies, buy them on Amazon.
Or heck, go to get the Boomerang streaming service. That's actually a pretty decent deal. They have a free trial period if you want to check it out.
Yeah, well, all I can say is this was a great episode.
I had fun with this one.
I would love to see 4 other movies, do the other 4 other movies in the future.
Season 3.
Yeah. So for our next episode, actually for the next couple of episodes, we're going to be doing like a little mini series because we are going to be doing local stars from right here in Wisconsin. Now, when it comes to these actors are big names, and then they're very big for both Wisconsin and in like film industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
I am talking actors like Donnie Mishi, Frederick March, Orson Welles. We're going to be starting out with a local native who ended up winning 2 Oscars in his career, Spencer Tracy. And I'm honestly excited for this miniseries.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a heck of it. It may even go to 3 episodes, depending on how much I can convince him to put on something like, some of the other things.
Yeah,
'Cause
well,
I've got movies in my head too that feature Wisconsinites that,
yeah,
it's
well,
gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a good one.
yeah. I mean, when it comes to modern ones, I can think of there's Willem Dafoe from Appleton.
There's Gary Burkhoff.
There's also Gene Wilder from Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many choices. But until then, I'm Chris Wyert,
And I'm Jaden.
and thanks for watching this excellent special episode of Chris's Classic Cinema. We'll see you next time.
Bye.